Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Joe Naz podcast. Today, we have an old friend of mine that I've not seen for many years, and she reached out to me because she wanted to come and tell her story on the podcast. Her name is Rachel Paez, and she's here with her partner, Rebecca Wollen, and they started a company called Rebels Farm. And what they do is they essentially take horses to state penitentiaries, or specifically one that they've been working at for a while, and it's a maximum security penitentiary. And they use horses to help individuals heal from the traumas that they've suffered and from the traumas that they might have inflicted on others. It's a very interesting story. This is one that I'd really never heard of anything like this before, so I feel blessed for them to come onto this podcast and share this story. It is one where we're going to talk about what it's like to spend time in a state penitentiary and also in a maximum security prison and with some of the most dangerous inmates in the world. So when it comes to this podcast, if you want to hear some crazy stories and you want to hear how healing can happen through equine training, then go ahead and jump on in. I also wanted to ask a huge favor. If you don't mind doing me a favor and please liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple, we'd really appreciate it. And this really means a lot to us. This helps to keep the podcast going and to make sure that we can come and bring you more stories that will hopefully influence and change your life. Thanks again for tuning in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Joe Naz podcast. I am extremely excited today. I have one of my oldest friends, somebody I have not seen in many years because she escaped to Ohio and now she rides horses all day long and gets to help people out with their emotional traumas. We have Rachel Paez and we have Kendra Wollen here, her business partner, and they are the owners of Rebels Farm. And this is going to be a very intriguing conversation because I've not spoken to Rachel in a long time. And she started this company where they are helping inmates throughout the country and through different facilities where they're incarcerated. And they go and they essentially help them with emotional trauma by using horses to help them deal with these childhood wounds, these wounds that have occurred through criminal activity. And this is going to be a really cool story. I've never really heard of people doing this. I've heard of people doing it with veterans and helping to deal with trauma in that way, but going to essentially penitentiaries and to helping people on that level, I'm sure that you hear the craziest things, you see the craziest things. I'm really excited to hear a lot of those stories today. So Rachel, Kendra, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, this is really exciting. Like you said, we haven't kind of caught up in a long time, and I'm excited to hear what has brought us to this space from other spaces we've been in before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely, like you said, we're in a very unique industry. There are not many of us out there doing this type of work. So yeah, thanks for having us on and talking about kind of some topics that maybe aren't in the forefront of a lot of people's minds, but need to be, and there are ways to kind of contribute to our mission.
100%. I'm really excited to hear this. I mean, like me and Rachel know each other from the years where we used to go to like base shows at Academy, like back in LA.
Old base head days.
So
yeah.
like we're just like in different places in life. So like we haven't seen each other in years too. So I'm excited to actually catch up with you and hear how life in Ohio is. And so I also want to give a little background. We have a little intro on both. So Rachel is the founder of Rebels Farm, and she is a certified equine-assisted healing facilitator, addiction specialist, mental health program developer, and consultant. And then Kendra is a certified equine behavior specialist, farm manager, and an accomplished horse trainer. She also has a BA in studio art and designs all of Rebels Farm's marketing materials and training booklets. So I kind of want to get a little bit into each one of these because I think it'd be good to give people a little background of what it means to be like an equine-assisted healing facilitator, an addiction specialist, just understanding your education and your story of how we got to this point, and then we can talk about what Rebels Farm is. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Does either of you want to go first, or
do you want to go first? Because you founded Rebels Farm.
Sure. Yeah. I'll go first. So yeah, I think it all kind of started as my journey towards becoming an addiction specialist. So when I reached my kind of like late teen years, early 20s, I actually lost a partner to a fentanyl overdose. And I kind of had this strong drive to figure out a way to, I guess, prevent that situation from happening to others. And so
prayers go out to you.
Thank you.
We've lost several friends in our community this year to the same thing.
And
it's an absolute epidemic right now, and it's a nightmare.
It really is. And I'm actually excited to tell you, we'll segue more into that, but it's not just in the outside world. The inside world is also afflicted by this terrible crisis that we're dealing with. But so I kind of saw this desire, my first like really like aha moment of what I wanted to do with my life. And so I went to school, school to study addiction and how it impacts the mind, with the end goal of creating harm reduction programs. History of partying, having kind of all of these experimentations. I saw what it was like and experienced what it was like to have no education and just like grab bag things, and like how much risk is involved with lack of discussion around experimentation with drugs. So that was kind of like my main focus going through school. And I ended up leaving after I graduated, and I became kind of like found my niche into program development. And I was working with an outpatient facility for adolescents. And we were, again, creating a curriculum of education and how to put yourself in safe environments if it is something that you want to explore with safe drugs and safe people. Again, that safety word. And so I was doing that. And the addiction field really was where I honed in on what got me excited, which is like sitting in a group of people and talking about hardship and trauma and that group dynamic that comes when there's 12 people sitting in a room talking about, a shared experience, whether it's drugs, process addictions, eating disorders, those kinds of things. And so what I found was these kids, these teenagers that I was working with, were not getting it. They were not getting the let's sit for 3 hours and look at a whiteboard and talk about these statistics and kind of like almost like four walls closing in type of technique of treatment for adolescents. And I felt like there was this missing piece of experiential therapy.
Yeah. Where it feels more natural. It's not so much just like, you got to pay attention to this. You got to read these terms. You got to feel it this way, right?
Exactly.
And it just kind of happens and envelops on its own.
Which is not something that's super common. It's, of course, growing, but like that alternative self-care, that alternative support is not a priority for a lot of treatment facilities.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, it's also what they're taught, right? So that's very real too, is you're kind of doing something a little bit newer and it's something that's a little bit more like almost like not experimental, for lack of a term. You know that it works.
Yes.
And you have a process and you understand the psychology behind it. But for those people that go to school and they're like, do it this way, have them develop it this way, it can feel unnatural, even though it might be more natural, right? Yep. And even like when I was in the men's groups that I've been a part of with like Sacred Sons, it's not like we're dealing with deep psychological trauma from childhood, but it happens through different activities that trigger certain emotional responses. And it's not a cookie cutter way of like happening. Some guys get triggered by wrestling with another guy because they've never gone physical with another guy. Some people get triggered just by giving someone a hug. Yeah. Some get triggered just by watching someone else cry because, when they were a child, they got beat if they ever cried. So there's all kinds of different ways to kind of open the door. And these cookie cutter approaches, I don't think they really get to that point. And it's the real emotional activities or something that will open your heart or something that feels more natural that will really get people to open up more.
Yep. And that's kind of like the whole reason why Rebels Farm became a thing. It's like I just saw that there weren't enough opportunities for people to, one, get outside. The impact is substantial of how nature, can help people and heal people. So getting people outside, getting people in a environment where they might not be as comfortable because there's animals or there's, more space or they're outside of the city. And then, I've had horses, Kendra and I have had horses our whole life. And so they have saved, I think, both of us in other points of our lives. So like, why not just like combine all of that and see how it can impact others? And so Rebels Farm kind of became an idea. Also kind of started, so when I was first in school, I had this grandiose idea of, again, harm reduction was REBEL, which it stands for Real Education Before Experimenting with Lives, which is kind of like the whole
education before
experimenting with lives. Yeah, real education before experimenting with lives. That's what fostered the idea. And then we grew into Rebels Farm and bringing that technique into nature and horses. So that's where kind of Rebels Farm went. And we, over the years, have worked with different populations. On my outside life, I was in the incarcerated population and I blended the two and we are here.
Gotcha. So you didn't per se take like a course that was like equine-assisted?
Actually,
like
yes,
training?
we did. So there are a few different type of certification courses. One's called EGALA, one's called Natural Lifemanship, OK Corral. So there are different modalities within the equine therapy, equine healing business. Okay. There are also like a difference between ground-based equine therapy, so no riding, and riding therapy. which is more like you're thinking people with disabilities, people who are bound to a wheelchair, and certain veteran populations do the riding therapy. No riding. There's no riding in what we do. It's all ground-based activities. And we're certified through EGALA, which is the modality that we use.
Okay, got it. And are these like online courses, or do you
So
go to
they're in person. So
university?
yeah, they're like
Okay.
intensive. So usually some will be, EGALA for us was like a 5-day intensive when we had to do something for a year. Then we do another 5-day intensive. And then you have like CEUs to continue education every 3 years.
Okay.
So it's like a good organization. And most of them are that kind of intensive setup structures.
Okay, super interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've never heard of EGALA
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Okay, cool. And
hmm
then and so with that training, I guess you also said that you trained to be an addiction specialist. Was that something
Yep.
just through something
Yeah,
different?
so University of San Diego has actually more schools now, but a specific 2-year program for addiction specialists.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. And then what were the basis of those classes, or what types of classes were you
So
taking?
a lot of it was like a chemical dependency. You'd have like a chem class that was like talking about, how drugs intermingle, how they impact you. And then we had group dynamics, we had interventions. So like how to essentially set up to help somebody maybe go to rehab or start the process of rehab. What are some other courses? Psychology, childhood education. I think those were kind of the main focuses.
Yeah.
And then you take a big exam.
Okay, awesome. So
Mhm.
I mean, all these things obviously played into each other and ended
Yes.
up leading you down this road.
Yes.
I didn't even know that there was an addiction specialist degree that you could get in
Uh-huh.
college. So that's amazing. So I mean, I'm sure you did a lot of the basics that most therapists and most
Yep.
psychologists go through, and it was just specific focus in it in
In
addiction.
addictions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rad. Awesome. And then you ended up meeting obviously Kendra along the way.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
know we were talking a little bit before the podcast started, but you were saying you guys met each other through a Facebook post.
Through a Facebook post. Yeah.
Yeah, she was looking at the time, actually, Rebels Farm was working closely kind of with the VA. We were doing programs with them. And also we were doing kind of some halfway house sorts of like, 30, 60, 90 day houses based out of San Diego, where they would come to our farm and do therapy with us, right there. So she was looking for a new place for quite a big herd at that time. We weren't sure like how we were going to split up between California and Ohio.
Yeah, I was relocating to Ohio.
And she wasn't looking for a business partner. Of course, like our prison program hadn't taken off or anything like that. So she met me essentially to, be a place to keep her horses and run her herd out of, and just good place for program for our veterans. And our relationship as friends like evolved, and she asked me to come host some groups with her and sent me away to EGALA, get my certification. And here I am as her equine specialist now, equine behavior specialist. So just kind of trapped now.
And then I asked,
in a great way.
and then I asked her to go to prison with me. And
Yeah.
she said yes.
Yeah.
So
Did you guys just grow up on farms? Is that like just how it happened for both of you? Or like, why are you guys so into horses?
yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's totally fair. We're
Yeah.
crazy horse girls. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
So I started riding when I was 3, and I started competing on a national level at 5. I've had horses my whole life. I went pro really early on. And it was just a constant for me of like, I had some turbulence at home, and the barn and my horse became my unconditional love and my safety.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's always been there. And then I just created a business that allowed me to have a lot of horses.
But where did you live that you were just able to
So
have horses?
I grew up in Maryland, and I had horses kind of like I had like a farm that I rode at all the time. Yeah, just throughout my life, I've lived on different farms. I've lived on goat farms, dairy farms, different types of horse farms, breeding farms. So it's just been a different.
Yeah, it's been a different life.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How cool. Yeah, I mean, I've had zero experience with that. None of my family had any animals other than our pet
Have you
dog.
rid a horse before?
I've ridden a horse before.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you like it?
I did. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I remember actually being in like 5th grade. They like did this whole thing where they're teaching us how to do tricks and stuff on it, which was a lot of fun. So horses are amazing animals. I guess I just don't know enough about them. One of my employees, she rides her horse every single day. So she's very much into it, and she's thinking about moving to, I think, Montana here soon because she wants some space for her and her horse, and she's all about it. So maybe it's a sign that I need to go maybe have an experience or two.
Yeah, just go to like a dude ranch and like take a weekend and spend some time with some horses.
When you say dude ranch, what does dude ranch mean
exactly? So you could go and like do some like cattle driving where you could go out for like 3 days to 2 weeks, and you're on a horse and you're just moving cattle through thousands and thousands of acres of
There's people helping
wildlife.
you.
Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not
No,
like,
I
"Come
mean,
here,
they're not
get
just
off
like,
here."
good luck,
Send
figure
you
it
on
out.
your
Yeah.
own.
Like, take this
Yeah.
rope, buckaroo. Yeah, no.
And it's just a really cool experience. You know, when you get to spend like camping trips with horses, we both really enjoy camping with our horses. Like
Yeah.
it's just a unique experience. So
Yeah.
it's a good way to feel like a farmer when
Yeah.
you're doing that.
Yeah, but you guys are also more balanced than most people, right? You spend a lot of time in nature. You get
Yes.
a chance to spend time
Yeah.
with animals.
I mean,
Yeah.
part of living on a ranch and like a farm is like you have such a routine, which
Yeah.
is so nice. It takes like, you know, your mind away from things because so many things are counting on you. You know, to wake up themselves in the morning. They need their breakfast, they need their water, they need, you know, the basic needs and care.
You can't be depressed in your bed all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You
then
know,
there's
like
a
you have to
rooster
get up.
We got things
Yeah,
to
the
do.
rooster's
You know,
screaming.
yeah, the dogs wake you up as
Yeah.
soon as the day is like ready to start. So it keeps you like very, very normal. Very like every day is pretty much the same. But that's
Yeah.
nice. That relieves so much stress in
Yeah.
my life.
If you get a farm,
personally.
don't get a rooster.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
my one piece of advice.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, it's funny that you say this. I remember the other day I like had a day where I didn't have enough to do and I started getting anxious.
Mhm.
And I literally started feeling like a bit depressed and stressed about the fact that I didn't have enough to do, which should be the opposite.
Yep,
I should
that's
be like
fair, though.
relaxed
Yeah.
Yep.
and
Yeah.
feeling good. But like, you know, having that energy and just realizing that it needed to move. But if you're on a farm, your energy is always moving.
Yeah.
You have things to do, you have animals to tend to, you guys have things that need to be upkept. And it was just like an interesting correlation when you said that you don't have time to be depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I literally was sitting there, I was like, I have too much time and I'm a bit depressed.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what my thoughts were.
But I
Yeah.
think what it is, it's
Yeah.
not just that you go out and you feed your horses and that's the routine of the depression. It's
Yeah.
like you're forced to. So my husband and I have a rule in the house: you have to have 15 minutes of outside time a day. Whatever is involved in that 15 minutes, I don't really care. But like you
Yeah.
have to be outside for 15 minutes because it just gets you grounded again. It gets you back
Yeah.
in nature, back to like your body and yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that we don't live in a world that is supportive of that. And like
No.
I can say for myself, like I have to live on a farm. I could not do this life
Yeah.
without that built-in like self-care. My 15
Yeah.
minutes is walking outside and like I do anxiety laps around my farm if I'm having a stressful day and I'll just like lap the property.
That's
And
hilarious.
you know, like
Yeah.
that's just such a gift that
Yeah.
I've built a life that has that tool. We both have that tool for ours.
Yeah, I mean, like scientifically, they talk
Yep.
about just spending 15 minutes a day, just literally with your feet bare on the ground.
Mhm.
It actually decharges the ions in your body, and like there's actual health benefits. Not just, I mean, there's
Mhm.
health correlates to like mental health too, but there's physical health benefits too.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, most of us live in a box. We never see sunshine. We stare at one screen from one screen to the next to the next. You go from a medium-sized screen to a huge screen before you go to sleep, and then you stare at your tiny screen as you drift away
Mhm.
into the darkness. So it's a completely different lifestyle. And I mean, kudos to you for understanding that. And I mean, you guys live on a farm, so you
Yeah.
get that experience every single day. Most people literally have to force themselves just to
Mhm.
go outside for 15 minutes, which is absolute insanity.
Yeah. Now, like there is definitely, I mean, depends on how you look at the downside, but like we might not see people throughout the day. You know,
Yeah.
our days might be just like hanging out at the farm.
Yeah.
Really don't really talk to anybody that
Yeah.
answers back to us.
I
Yeah.
mean, they
And
answer
it's-
back in
they
different
answer
ways.
back, just
Yeah.
not in words.
Yeah.
And it is, it can be an isolated lifestyle. So
Yeah.
if that is something that you as an individual kind of struggle with, like,
Yeah.
it might not be the life for you, but
Yeah.
I don't mind. My job is people. So like to
Yeah.
have my space where there is
Yeah, you
no
get the
people.
balance.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you get
Yeah.
the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, but that's amazing that you found what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess what's your favorite type of animal on the farm and which one drives you the most crazy?
Okay, so I have 2 male donkeys, Radar and Dudley, and they are the loves of my life. They're cute, they're cuddly, they like to give me hugs. So I'd say they're my favorite.
Yeah.
And then the one that gives me the most trouble, I probably have 2. So my rooster, his name is Hal. He's very friendly, he's a nice guy, but he likes to start like cockle-doodle-doing at like 4 a.m.
Gotcha.
And he'll go from like 4 to 6. So that's annoying. And then I have like a young horse who can just sometimes be opinionated in what
Yeah.
she wants to do, and she can cause some trouble. So I think
A
those
little
would be
destructive.
she's very destructive.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I know this is kind of dark, but my friend Tiana, she was telling me that she was visiting her friend's farm, and she said the roosters are kind of rapey, and they kind of like they get
For
like
sure.
super
wait,
aggressive.
they're
Yeah,
super
yeah, they're
rapey.
super rapey. Like they
Yeah.
actually like tearing
One
apart
of my
the
chickens has a
chickens.
rape guard.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
literally. Okay, good. So I'm not crazy.
really
Okay,
cute.
I
It
was like,
looks
I
she
told her,
has
I'm
a
like,
little
She has a little dress
vest
on,
Yeah,
and like it's
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
but they are
yeah,
that's why when I say my rooster is very nice, like he likes his ladies, so like the
And-
raping is to
yeah.
a minimum.
got
But
it.
particularly, he likes one poor
Yeah,
lady.
he likes one Miss. Her name is Miss Frizzle,
Got it.
and she has like special feathers, and he just really likes her. And he has really big spurs, so like the big, fingernails on the back of his feet, and that's how he latches on.
Yeah,
And she was just getting messed up, and so now she wears a little dress,
Yeah.
and she's
a lot
totally
happier.
fine. But it just means that he likes her a lot. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
I mean, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so she was not crazy when she
Yeah,
made those
she was
comments.
not
She
crazy.
was like sending me photos. I'm like, this is terrifying.
Yes, no,
It's
she's
kinda
not.
scary.
She's not wrong. She's not
Yeah.
wrong.
Gotcha. Okay. So, how did Rebel Farms get started, and when did it get started?
So it got started like it was an idea in 2017. I had just gotten certified and in equine-assisted therapy,
Mhm.
and I decided that I wanted to do a little traveling and a little learning. So I moved to England and I moved to a care farm. So it's essentially a agricultural facility where their demographic was kids who needed like extra support, whether it be educationally or emotionally. And they would come out to the farm and they had different tasks, whether it was feeding the animals, cleaning out pens. They were a goat dairy operation. So like bottling milk, milking the animals, and like farm produce. So I went out and I studied this kind of facility and formulated how I could incorporate this back home. I came home. At the time, I was working for a outpatient drug treatment facility, and I was working with men who had just gotten out of prison on drug charges and needed to go through drug court.
Okay.
And I loved the demographic. It was my first experience working with any sort of criminal.
Yeah.
And I loved the demographic, but I hated the job and I hated having a boss. And my husband, who was then my boyfriend, was like, I think you should just quit and start a nonprofit. I was 24 years old. I was like, sure, this sounds like a great idea. And I guess it kind of formed into something. And
Yeah.
the first demographic that I worked with was young adults who had co-occurring mental health diagnoses and substance abuse diagnosis. And equine therapy kind of just started, Rebels Farm just kind of started from there. And 2017.
Well, I guess like, how do you even find clients for this? You know what I mean? Like, are you like just posting on your social media, like, hey, I can help you with emotional damage with my horses? Like, I'm just,
Yeah.
like, how did that even develop into a thing?
Honestly, it's a few crazy emails. Like it's like sending an email to like somebody who has a drug treatment facility or has an organization
Okay,
that
so
I
you
would be-
reach out to
I'm
drug
reaching out.
facilities.
Yep.
Okay, so you reach out to facilities that know that they have these types of people
Yep.
there, and then that was it. Got it. So it isn't just like people reaching out to you and be like, I need help with this.
No.
You create partnerships with these facilities that have these types
Yes.
of individuals there.
The only time that we were kind of found was I was published in Parade magazine and
What magazine?
Parade magazine.
Is that like a horse magazine?
Parade magazine is a
San Diego.
it's
magazine.
not San Diego. It's
not.
actually a big national magazine that goes in like the newspaper.
Okay.
And they did an article on equine therapy.
Okay.
And we were one of the programs that was featured. And from that article, the VA contacted us. They were looking to get a program started for homeless veterans and those
Okay.
impacted by homelessness. And then so we kind of shifted and was doing that demographic for a while.
Okay. Oh, interesting. And so when these facilities reach out to you, do you work like is it like through insurance that you guys get paid, or is
So
it like
they will bill insurance and then they'll compensate us, whether that be a grant, whether that be, they have special funding.
Yeah, I'm just interested. Like, how much does it end up cost? Does it cost the patient or the client themselves, or is it just the facility
The
gets billed?
facility. The
Got it.
facility.
And what do you guys charge for something like that? It's just interesting.
So it really depends on the demographic. We want to make it as accessible as possible, especially
Yeah.
since the demographics that we're working with are this more affected. So
Yeah.
I would say anywhere per per individual, it can be $70 to $100 depending on how long they're at the farm.
That's not bad at all.
No.
No, that's actually very,
And generally we run, if we're working with a treatment facility, we'll see them for 8 weeks. If we're doing our inmate program, we see them once a day, but we're there for like a 4-day period. So it kind of is dependent on what structure and what curriculum we're bringing to that program is depending on how much it can also cost.
What do you mean by curriculum?
So unlike most equine therapy programs, we follow a curriculum that we developed. I would say somebody will come to us and they'll be like, this is the problem that we're having with the demographic that we're serving. What would you say are the solutions, some of the solutions to the problems that they might be facing? And how can you correlate that with horses? And so we have developed a training module that goes through topics that we think can impact an individual. That could be communication styles. It can be emotional regulation. It can be learning how to set a boundary. It can really be lifestyle skills that we think need more attention.
Okay.
And then we follow that for however long we're seeing an individual for, or a group.
Okay. Why don't you give me an example of 2 of those ones that you just mentioned of like what the curriculum might look like?
Sure. So we discuss, I think one of our favorite activities that we do is choices and outcomes. So we're working with individuals and we're looking at, okay, like you've made this decision. This is the impact of this decision. This is what then happens. And so what we do with the horses was we'll play like a red light, green light. So an individual will have a horse in their hands that they'll be leading, and we'll give them a scenario. So for some of our incarcerated population, it'll be like, wow, you finished high school, like you got your GED, take 2 steps forward. And them and the horse will take 2 steps forward.
Okay.
We'll give them another scenario, they'll back up, kind of so forth and so on. Yeah. The goal of that program is when some of this demographic, whether it be substance abuse, incarceration, a lot of their choices can be selfish. They can forget that others are impacted. And when you're with a horse, sometimes horses don't like to go back and forth. It can be like really annoying. That comes out in that session. So that individual in real time is seeing how this choice that was just given to them is impacting something else.
Got it. So if it's a negative choice, you have them go back with the horse, and then the horse is like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are we going backwards? And they're feeling that resistance, which they might have not felt before because they were ignorant to it or they just weren't able to see the person that they were affecting. How interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think that's one of our favorite activities. And then, talking again, like emotional regulation, the whole concept of equine therapy, the whole concept of interacting with a horse requires emotional regulation. That animal, more specifically than I think dogs or cats, their entire survival is based on like reading how you're bringing your energy to them. And so if you are anxious, you are aggressive, you are heightened, that animal is going to stay away or show some sort of distance being put between you and the individual. And so for some of our individuals, again, emotional regulation can be hard. It is real time. Go up to this horse, go pet it for the first time. And this person who has their heart racing, that horse is going to run away from them. You talk about it. Let's take some deep breaths. Let's lower that heart rate.
Yeah.
And you see that relationship change. So,
I mean, have any of these individuals ever tried to get on the horse and ride away?
no, but it's always asked. It's always asked, it's, can we ride them? You know,
Got it. So they're not actually riding them when
there's
they're there.
no riding. It's all ground based.
Got it. And then, I mean, I'm guessing that many of these individuals are not of the emotional stable kind. So are they like affecting the horses to where the horses are like jumping around, or do you guys have great control under the horses?
Sometimes. No, I think.
I mean, that's kind of the intention. So our horses are off lead, essentially.
Yeah.
They have no halters or lead ropes on or anything, and they're in this loose space with us and the inmates. And I think that's part of the like protection between us and our participants and also our horses, is that they have the freedom to make that choice of like, if they don't want to be in this situation, they don't have to be there. So if we're never going to ask them to do something that they're uncomfortable with as far as our horses. I mean, we ask the inmates to do things that they're definitely uncomfortable with all the time, and like, so they grow emotionally and, make a different choice. But if they make a choice that the horse doesn't like, we always give them the opportunity to try again.
Got it. And when you say off lead, you mean there's like no saddles? There's
No.
just
No
like
saddles,
is there a
no
rope just
halters,
pulling
no
it?
nothing.
Got it. Okay.
Loose,
They're just loose.
running
so literally
around.
the horses are loose, and so they literally respond real time to what's actually going on with the human being. Oh, I did not realize that. How cool. Yeah. What an interesting experience.
And we'll put them on, or we'll have them put the leads on them for some activities. But one of the real important things and like why they draw so much out of these like little tiny activities that we have them participate is because we give very little instruction, and it's
Yeah.
really up to them to like, make the choice and build as a group together. And sometimes they have
Yeah.
to work as a team, and there's no instruction for it to get there. And that happens. And that's always nice to see.
We call it organized chaos.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Like
can
we really
imagine.
enjoy the we're not going to give you any rules, any structure. Go figure it out, and then you see it all erupt, and you're like, "Oh gosh, this is horses are running around, people are scared," and you're kind of like watching this happen. And then we come together and we process it, and then everything changes.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so the individuals that are participating in the penitentiaries, are they forced to take this course or is it all volunteer?
It's all voluntary. They actually have to fill out an application. What Rachel and I will first read through. Rachel reads most of them.
I love reading
And
the applications.
yeah, she'll read them to me on the phone sometimes, and we're just like really touched by what these guys have to say, which sounds probably,
No, it's not weird at all.
yeah,
Yeah,
very,
I'm just interested. What are the questions on the application?
yeah, that's a
So one is like, what is something you need to let go of? If you could go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be and at what age? That piece right there, that age, it gives you an insight into when the trauma started. They're going back to that trauma piece. So for us as facilitators, it gives an insight into what their level of awareness is. And then it could be somebody that you look up to. We have a new one actually on there this year where we wanted to incorporate people who are more artistic. And so it's like you're planting a seed for your life, what does it grow into? And we have a lot of artists that come into our group, tattoo artists, drawers, graffiti artists. So giving them that outlet. We try to make the application as open as possible. A lot of these guys, more than, a little under 50% don't have a high school diploma. So their
Yeah.
education level is really
Yeah,
low.
you're not trying to trick them. Or
We're not
anything.
trying to
You're
trick
You're just
them.
trying to get them to start thinking about the things that they're
Exactly.
going to come there to work on.
And, we have guys who
Yeah.
will have somebody else fill out the application for them because they can't write. We'll have individuals who will put like 5 words on the application. As long as they put effort in, they generally get accepted.
Okay.
yeah, and we're lucky enough to have like a little bit of background. We can always
Mhm.
ask,
Yeah.
for there's a little bit of their story if we're struggling with the application.
Yeah.
But most of them are like, pretty just from the get go, like pretty
Yeah.
breathtaking.
Have you guys ever felt unsafe in these scenarios with these gentlemen? Because I don't know so it's from what I saw, I watched your video,
Yeah,
which was essentially a documentary,
Yes.
right? So it looks like you guys are there with a couple of maybe the officers or maybe one officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what is like the most amount of gentlemen or women? I actually don't even know if there's women involved in the penitentiaries in your scenario.
Yeah. So the main demographic that we work with are men. In the institution that we operate our home base out of, which is Richard Donovan Correctional Facility. It's right above the border in San Diego. They are men. We occasionally will have a non-binary or a trans inmate in our group. And then we are actually heading after this weekend, we're heading to a new prison that we've never operated out of, which is a women's facility. So we're very excited about that. So again,
And just a side note, that's one of 2 women's state prisons in all of California.
Yep.
So there's 32 men's facilities. in
29 men's state
Yeah.
facilities. Yeah.
So-
I mean, is there a reason that you wanted to work in penitentiaries over anything, or you just think those are
Like
the most
prison? Like why in
Yeah,
general?
yeah. Why in prison are those
Um,
people the most injured, or what was your thoughts?
Well, so like I mentioned, like I had done a little bit of work with guys coming out, and then I got hooked up with a nonprofit here or in San Diego called Brilliance Inside, and it is a TEDx group that came into the institution and was working with medium level security inmates. And it was my first exposure into prison, and I went in, and it was life-changing, clearly, because I am now hooked on that population. And I spent 6 months with them developing a curriculum, because I had gotten into curriculum development at the time, and developed a curriculum for men who were serving life sentences. They wanted to do kind of like a Scared Straight, but they wanted it to be more focused on the mental health impact of prison.
Yeah.
It's not that you're with, gangbangers, murderers, all of these kind of scary scenarios. It's you are rotting in a cell for 30 years with your own brain. And for these individuals that have no tools, that can be a really dark place. So that kind of started the love for the population. And in that time that I was there, I had this crazy idea that's like, great, it'd be so great if we can bring horses here and I could bring my outside life inside. And I pitched the idea. It was a no, like flat out no. Didn't even let me come to the table. They were like, "You're crazy. You're out of your
Who
mind."
did you pitch it to? The TEDx people?
No. So she had got me a meeting with the warden, and with a couple chief of staff, and I got to the day that I was supposed to pitch to this. Again, I'm 24 years old at this point, and I get to the prison to like have this meeting, and one person showed up for the meeting. Everybody else rescheduled. And so I took that as my sign that like this was going to be a hard road. It took me 5 years to get approved. I kind of repitched a couple times. They had a change of staff, change of warden. And it just was hard to get it going. And then COVID hit and nothing
You
was
repitched to
operating.
the same
Prison.
Why don't you go pitch to a different one?
Because at the time, like logistically, it's hard with the horses to travel outside of that place. And it's very difficult to get in touch with prison staff that you would need to discuss this matter with. It's not public knowledge. So like it's a lot of hoops just to get in the door. And I had seemed like I had a pretty good door. Donovan is also a huge prison. It's 6 prisons in one, minimum to maximum security. So I figured it was my best shot aiming more for the minimum security yard. As it evolved and it came to, I had relocated to Ohio. I had lost all hope that this was going to be a thing. I got a call from the prison. They wanted to start the program. And so we
had like our horses that we had at the time were like on farm, like old senior, like
we were going to kind of shut the business down, like kind of finish out this contract that I had with the VA and
basically,
close the doors, wait for all the horses to kind of retire. And
I mean, this is just, I guess I just have a couple thoughts.
Sure.
One is that, so I guess energetically, I'm just trying to think like, where did you think you were going to have the most impact with these guys that are already on death row and they're going nowhere fast? Right. So my thought was like, why start with them? But then as I'm listening to you speak, it's like, obviously you start at the darkest, worst energy, and that's probably where it's going to have and not to call it worst energy, that's a wrong term. Just like where's the darkest energy in the sense of where people need the healing the most is probably the people that are on death row. But I'm just thinking on like an actual impact level, is it going to have the most impact because those people are maybe never going to leave jail and they're never going to see the light of day again. And so is that actually making a change? So I know that's kind of a lot of questions all at once, but these were just the thoughts I was having when you were going through.
Well, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. So I just going to say the experience that changed it for me, like the pivotal moment of my incarcerated relationship that I knew that this was my demographic. I was at one of these groups. It was like my second time volunteering for Brilliance Inside. And there were about probably 40 inmates in this group. And we all stood up, and I don't know if you're familiar, there's an assessment, the Adverse Childhood Experience Assessment. And it's a series of questions that determine how traumatized your childhood was. And it's simple questions. Did you have 2 parents? Did you see alcohol abuse in your home? Did you experience poverty? Kind of these like basic questions about trauma.
And then it gives you points on how traumatized you are? Okay.
Yeah. We're in this group and we stand up in a circle, and she leads us through these questions. She called it the humanity circle. And we all stood around. If you had experienced that trauma, you stepped in. If you had not, you stayed out in the circle. And we're going through these questions, and, you just see, you step in, right? You have this experience and you step in and you look to your left and you look to the right, and there's these terrifying, massive, fully tattooed, scary dudes and little me. And I look around and I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing in the circle with these men. There's similarity here.
Yeah.
Whether I grew up upper class, Jewish conservative family, had never really, I have a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
And it was like the most humanizing experience I'd ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And that was when I knew like these are my people.
Yeah.
These are my people.
It's interesting when you said that activity too. I feel like I felt it almost like ranking like the values in the traumas. And one thing that I've realized is more and more that I talk about trauma with people, there shouldn't be a ranking.
Yeah.
But I do like the inclusiveness of it to show that whether it was this intense trauma or it was something that you'd consider less trauma, that everybody was just showing that they'd been through something together.
Yes.
And so I'm sure that's what the purpose of the activity is. And so it's just also like fine balancing and understanding that like, when I was, once again, to bring it back to like the Sacred Son stuff, I know some men, and for me especially, when some guys stepped in, it would talk about like the fact that they'd been raped or that they, one guy talked about something where you really hurt somebody else, like physically. And I'm like, okay, my shit's not that serious. I don't even want to step in and I don't want to say anything because I don't feel that I'm worthy almost to talk about things after this guy went through such a severe situation. So I guess that's what was going through my mind when you were talking about the activity. But I understand that there is the ulterior
Yeah.
purpose, which is really what it's
When you
for.
remove the ego and you
Yeah.
remove the competitive nature that
Yeah.
unfortunately men in the community of men have to work through extra hard, you see the trauma is trauma,
Yeah.
right? And trauma is relevant to your individual experience.
Yeah.
That's literally the definition of trauma. But we can get into the competitive nature of exactly what you just
Yeah.
said, like, oh, my trauma's not good enough, or
Yeah.
I have more trauma than you do. You know, it can be the
Yeah.
flip side. When in the end of the day, like, it should be the thought around like, God, doesn't it suck that this person had to experience this super
Yeah.
shitty thing, regardless of the level
No,
of it?
it's real. This is something that I realized recently with my sister and brother is
Mm.
we were like talking about like who was fucked up more. Like just
I literally have had the same conversation,
like,
so I get.
and it's like at some point I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Why is
We
it
obviously all
competition?
went through different
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Like, and like it was just more just like also like because I realized I'd caused a lot of the shit that they went through. And so like just like being like, look, I'm sorry, we went through what you went through. What do I need to hold space for? What do we need to talk about? How can I fix it now?
Yeah.
You know, obviously I cannot go back and change the person I was back then, but also just like try not to feel shame around just understanding I was an unconscious individual, just doing the best I could with the tools I had at that time. And obviously I did a really shitty job, but just like it's not a competition. It's like we're all obviously
Yeah.
dealing with the emotional repercussions. How can we change it at this exact moment?
Yeah.
That's the same thought process these guys are having, right?
Yeah.
These guys who have been in for prison for 30 plus years and they're looking for an opportunity to show this.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of opportunities in the prison system.
No, and they probably have zero opportunity to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, they have to defend themselves and worry about getting stabbed or just
exactly.
surviving. And so just having a space where they can even be somewhat emotional, I'm sure changes their lives entirely.
And we call it, I say lucky. I think the institution would have preferred it to go a different avenue, but logistically, Donovan, the institution we were, involved with, location-wise, the area that I had deemed appropriate to run session out of just so happened to be in the max security yard. They would have wanted
the reason being is like just to get the horses inside of the prison and like where
we could get the
trailer in. How can we unload the horses?
Maximum security yard means the worst.
Yeah,
sorry,
for that facility.
Yeah. So you can have a supermax, and you can have a max yard, and then you could have like a different type of max yard,
like isolation.
Yes, but max is as high of a level security as we would be able to operate out of. Supermax tends to have more isolation time, and they don't like to interblend the individuals. Most programming that is offered in institution is minimum security. Minimum security guys have a ton of programming, and they're setting them up for reentry, right? They want them to come back into the community with a set of skills that they did not learn in prison and did not learn before. I would say 80 to 90% of our individuals will never see outside of the prison walls.
Gotcha. And how many prisons have you done this at now?
So we've operated out of Donovan for the last 18 months.
Just one prison?
Just one prison. We are expanding to Chowchilla next week, which is Central California Women's Institute.
Have they done statistics on whether the crime in the facility has gone down since you started this?
So
sorry, random side.
No, it's actually a great question. That's a great question. So I'm going to have a two-part answer. So the first part being that they came to me with that problem. That was their main problem. Donovan has a high number of inmate-to-inmate fatalities, and high number of just aggressive behavior.
What is that high number? Like, what can you give me an example? Do they have a statistic?
So there would be a statistic. A lot of this is public knowledge, so you can go kind of through the state paperwork. I don't know what they would consider in a high number. When is
it just like is a statistic like crime per inmates? Is that what it is, or like stabbing per inmates? Like,
inmate to inmate violence against each other.
So an inmate to inmate violence per like inmate, I'm guessing is a statistic.
Yes, would be a statistic.
And so that number would just go down per chance.
Hopefully, based on kind of the programming.
Yeah.
So that was the problem, and then again, working with institutions, we have learned there is a lot of red tape. And a lot of things that we can't get access to. And
of course.
So
you're not a government agency.
Yeah.
They're not going to share anything.
They don't like sharing things.
I understand too.
It's so lucky that they, again, let us do something as crazy as this. But they actually just announced us that they will start allowing us to collect data to hopefully gain research and
Yeah, because
statistics
it would be
on
great. Because
this.
then you can, if you
Yep.
can't share that information with other facilities, they're not gonna know that you're having an impact.
And it's
Yeah.
also, I think
You're fine. You can touch it.
I think too, the other hard thing that you will find when you do choose to educate yourself on the incarcerated system, justice system, there's not a lot of studies. It's, again, there's so much red tape, makes it hard for people to gain this kind of knowledge of what is happening in prison.
Yeah.
And I think that can create even more problems. You're doing research, and your last published paper was pre-COVID, and so COVID was really hard on the prison system. And so, I think the more research we can get, the better.
Yeah, the better information.
I mean, I think a little bit deeper than that is like the system's hard on the system. The system that we're operating in isn't refined to the point where, like actual rehabilitation they're trying to prioritize it, and they're working towards that. But of course, with, people who have been in the, the prison system for so long, working there, it's going to be hard to like persuade them that these people are, capable of being good humans and, allowing them to re-enter society. So that's also kind of hard. Is on our yard, we're focusing on these guys that might not leave, and they're kind of forgotten about. Like the prison might not give them priority just because why waste that money if they're not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But also they're taking a risk on us, and we appreciate that. And we have some really good supporters and people inside the system that are, helping us grow, which is basically without the statistics, that's how we have to grow right now. Yeah.
Do you guys get these guys' stories before that? Like, do they give you their folder before they let you in with them?
We learned the lesson. Yeah. We learned the lesson that it's better if we don't look up stories.
Mm-hmm.
It really, our purpose is to help these individuals with who they are showing up with.
I would say yes and no, just from and I don't mean to tell you anything. I just would want to try to understand psychologically so I could maybe help the curriculum. But I guess this is more natural to let it flow.
Our purpose is not to analyze their
history.
Mm-hmm. The purpose of the program is just create a safe space we can talk.
Yeah.
And talk about topics that we think could help them in their life.
Yeah. Whether their life is someday leaving there or if it's just how they can be happy on this yard that they're confined to, because there is, there's still daylight and, get out.
We know we have a good session when people are telling us their crimes. That's always a good session.
Yeah.
And you generally know, because again, we're in a max yard, so we know the severity of the crime. There was a violent offense,
right.
And
of some kind. Yeah. Some of these guys are sentenced, and the reason they're on that yard isn't because of the sentence that originally put them in.
Yeah,
it's because
they continued the life of crime inside prison,
defending themselves within prison. Yep. They have to make choices in the life that they're put in that can
prison politics.
Got it. Yeah, and you guys were saying there's a lot of issues within prison itself, of drug problems itself.
A lot of drug problems,
which is surprising. It's just like, how do they even get it in there?
A flawed system.
Flawed system. There's a lot of avenues in which contraband can be brought in, and kind of talking on the fentanyl epidemic that we're in right now.
What are some of these avenues? I'm just interested. That I'm sure you don't know the full details.
So again, these individuals, some of the ones that we work with, they have a lot of connections. They're high-ranking drug lords. They're high-ranking gang members. They can bring it in through visitors. They can bring it in through packages. I think, unfortunately, it can be brought in through staff. Mm-hmm. I think that if there's a will, there's a way.
Gotcha.
And prison can create desperate individuals who are willing to do anything to escape their current reality.
Right.
Heroin is a very popular drug in California institutions. And again, with the fentanyl epidemic, you have a lot of individuals who have been incarcerated for decades and have no idea what's happening on the outside. And so they're getting their heroin, which has been the same heroin for decades, and using their normal dose that they would. And all of a sudden they're overdosing. And it's because they aren't really familiar with what's happening. They aren't aware that fentanyl is infiltrated the heroin market, the opiate market. And so you have a lot of accidental overdoses. You have a lot of purposeful overdoses.
SNL?
I'm sorry?
You said SNL? Accidental.
Accidental.
Sorry, I thought
accidental.
I heard SNL, my bad.
No. Accidental.
Yeah.
And one's on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a lot of guys, it's the same on the outside too. When you've been sober for a long time, the highest percentage of overdoses comes through a relapse. And so, individuals who have been sober for their time in prison. You know, if they relapse, again, they're relapsing on a drug that they don't know much about. And so it's just a really big problem. And it seems to impact the inmates really heavily. And it's a huge topic in our groups.
Yeah.
Is the loss of a human and how dehumanizing the experience can feel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with these high-level criminals, has anybody ever tried to get weird with you guys?
No.
So nothing.
No.
They're all very sweet in there.
We had one individual who just in the middle of group, you know, maybe had some anxiety, had some elevated emotions, asked to leave group. We got a little agitated. But other than that, everybody has been kind and compassionate and vulnerable. And like the space that gets created is one of true healing. And everybody wants to be there.
Yeah.
Got it. And how many people are at this penitentiary, just so we can have an idea?
So it's there's 3,000 people on our yard alone, and there's 6 yards.
Okay.
So
So you guys have only worked with one yard.
we only work with the max yard. Yeah.
Got it.
So
Why haven't you worked with the other levels? You just think you're having a better
just
impact?
logistically, like I
There's
said, the
nowhere.
space, that we have, like you have
Got
to
it,
be
because
really
they live in that one area.
Yeah.
and
They
so
live in
that's
that
all
one
the
area.
space
We
that
have
you
to
guys
have
have
like
for the
a-
horses.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
So you would work with other areas if it was possible.
Yes. They don't intermingle inmates.
Think of like an
Understood.
RT, like a recreation yard on the side of a yard. That's like the space we have. So we're
Got it.
connected directly to. They're not moved or anything. within.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, and how many inmates have you worked with in that year? 3,000.
So we have in the last 18 months done almost 80 inmates.
Okay.
We are heading to programming in 2 weeks at Donovan, where we will be graduating 20 inmates into our ambassador program, which they've been with us for a year. They've gone through all 3 parts of the programming, and they are coming back as peer supports. So for us, that's like a huge celebration.
Yeah, of course, that's huge. I mean, so when you say there's 3 parts, so they have to go through 1, 2, 3 to get through all of it.
Yep, and we
And
do it
how
over the
long?
course of a year.
Over the course of
Yep,
the year. So
we're
it takes
there
a
for
year
one
to
day.
go
Yep.
through each part,
Yep.
or all 3 parts, or just one part?
Each part, it'll take you about a year to get through. So we're there. We generally show up. We're about inside for about 6 hours, and we're programming for 3.5. And so we have a group of 10 to 12 inmates that'll come and program with us, and we see them for one day for 3 hours. 3 months later, 4 months later, we'll come back. We'll see them again for part 2 for the 3 hours.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay, and this curriculum, I know you guys brought some of the materials with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And I know your photo is a unicorn. I
Yeah.
think, the brand, which
Yeah.
is funny. Why a unicorn? Do you want to show the camera? So we
Yeah,
can see
sure. I can
that?
show the camera. So this is I'll show you this is our first manual. So this is what like all first timers will go through. And it
In
has
any
just,
institute. Yeah.
Yep, in any institute. And they'll just kind of go through this. It has a few activities. It's just really great. This is our
We'll put a digital copy in the notes so that people can get
Sure.
access to it.
That'd
If you
be
can make a
great.
note
Yep.
of that. So
Yeah.
is that okay?
yeah,
that'd be
absolutely.
Yeah,
great.
cool.
Yep,
Because just
yep.
so people can have an idea of what they're looking at and
Exactly.
what to look for.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So and then our prison program is this one with our little
yeah.
unicorn.
Do you mind if I can look?
Sure.
Yeah, cool. I just want to see this.
Sure.
Cool. So here we have a place for notes, it looks like. And then what is these are just different like
Yeah, they're different activities. And then these
Okay.
all topics correlate with the activity that we'll utilize with the horses. So we'll see an individual for about 30 minutes and we'll go through the manual without horses. And then we'll spend the rest of the time going through these topics with the horses.
Okay, got
And
it.
then they're free to like make notes in here,
Yep.
work in it after, like whatever they want to do. They get to take it home with them.
So
at
you
the
guys
end of
are
the day.
I should have looked at this before we started the podcast, but it looks like you guys are giving these individuals basic tools
Yes.
to help to
Mhm.
manage their emotions.
Yeah.
And this is basically, it seems like a step-by-step way that builds up, and then you allow them to kind of reflect on it almost like in a journaling
Yep.
experience. That's awesome. And so these tools, so I thought that there was like specific programs based on specific traumas, but it sounds like you're just giving them overall tools. And that's the thing I think about human beings in general, is that we're not taught how to regulate our own emotions
Yeah.
and how to manage our own depression and different stuff, and just even like things like breathing, right? And so you guys are giving them a basic playbook. That's something that they should have had way before prison. Then they would have never ended up in
Right.
prison. by
Yep.
Yeah.
chance. Okay, got it. Sorry. So
No,
continue
you're
on.
fine. And so the last part of our program is the Buckaroo program. So like they become little cowboys or cowgirls. I think so this is our program logo. And the reason we chose a unicorn, I think it's 2 parts. I think that our horses are unicorns. I think they're these magical beings that like shine their light and they just bring this energy unlike any creature on this earth.
Yeah. They're life changing, our little ones in our herd. Yeah.
In our herd, our little ones. And then
also we have this really special book to us.
Yeah, we love you.
Where at the end, just since the very first session, we've been having them kind of just like give their little handwritten testimonies, which are very touching. And we get to like go in the car after a hard day and read, like even though we have all this emotional burden that we're carrying now.
These are better than Yelp reviews.
Yeah. They're way better than Yelp reviews. They are though. They're like very similar.
I'll read some after you. After you go through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just magical. It's like lightheartedness, right? It's such a dark place. Prison is such a dark, gray place, and why not just like bring color and joy and like inner child experience? And so we created this manual that's like, again, it's filled with colors, it's filled with stars, and it's just something that they wouldn't normally get. This manual versus that one is more, how do you facilitate groups? So our buckaroos get to come back and support upcoming groups in part 1 and be peer supports. So they're learning more like horse knowledge, horse understandings, as well as like the importance of building rapport and being authentic. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the buckaroo difference is from the first part of the program.
What an interesting program. I mean, this is just so wild. So you basically developed this all on your own. There was no other thing going on like it.
So there are some there are programs out there, equine therapy programs with minimum security inmates and re-entry inmates where they focus on vocational. So how can we give these skills like feeding, animal care, blacksmithing to incarcerated individuals?
Got it.
So they can get
like
a job
vocational, so they can get a job afterwards.
Absolutely.
But you guys are not teaching anything.
No,
like
we're
that.
the only equine therapy program that is currently doing like emotional social learning.
Yeah.
And we're also the only institution that's working with high level inmates.
Got it.
Or a program that's working with high level inmates.
What's the biggest lesson each one of you have taken away from this so far?
I think just really go into any situation with an open mind. Yeah. Like you don't know how much someone else can teach you about yourself until you let them and you allow them to share their own experiences with you. And I think it's just a nice experience to go in there and step back and have like this beautiful thing kind of happen all around us. All we do is we give them like the stepping stones, and then every session, no matter if it's the first, second, or third, it's different every single time. And it's just beautiful. So just like keep an open mind, and when in need, wing it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you go in and we'll have a plan and like it does not go as planned.
Shows,
yeah. It always ends up what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever feel yourselves just like shut down with the level of trauma that's dropped on you all at once?
No.
No.
If anything, it like pumps my blood faster.
Yeah.
Like it makes me feel so alive and purposeful.
Yeah. It's a little addicting.
Yeah.
Going in. It's like sort of taking our film.
We love going to prison.
I liked it and I felt it.
Yeah.
I was just not the word I expected to hear.
Yeah. No, I mean it is. It's like this adrenaline rush that you get when you're. I mean, not so much for us.
I started feeling it the
first.
moment you said addicting.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt my adrenaline start pumping because I could imagine the stories you're hearing are probably
wild,
fucking crazy,
wild.
Yeah. And at the same time, they're like holding a miniature horse and like sometimes like kissing it on its face, and you're like, when is this? Like this person had
and
that
you're
kind
probably
of
the first female that they've come in contact with for some of them in years. I couldn't imagine what that emotionally is like for them.
We call everybody by their first name, which is not what you do in prison. You call them by their last name or their ID number.
Yeah, they lose their identity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So first names are a must in our group. And then at the end of every group, something that is also very unheard of, we shake everybody's hand. Mm-hmm. And most of these individuals, again, have not had a contact with a woman in decades.
Or a person. Besides,
yeah.
Violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, violent.
So it really is that like, for some of these individuals, it's like a human experience. Yeah. I would like to share one inmate story that is really, actually maybe two inmate stories.
Yeah, please do.
So Juan Bennett is an ambassador of our program. He was in our film. Juan has been incarcerated since he was 14. He was caught.
And how old is he now?
Probably almost 70.
Okay.
Yeah, he's only spent 14 years of his life outside of prison. Mm-hmm. And he was caught in some like minor trouble here in San Diego. And his parents, instead of sending him to juvie, they deported him. Yeah. where he got into a drug ring and he got caught coming across the border and was put in prison. When he turned 19, he killed his cellmate. And he caught a life charge. He then was up in San Quentin, where he started one of the most dangerous Mexican gangs in the prison system in the state of California. Wild man. And he came to our group and just really this quiet man, very quiet man, weird tattoos. And weird tattoos. And he just opened up to the horses like it was an experience he had never had. And he really grew with the program. And he was telling Kendra, why don't you tell his alcoholism story?
Just to correct you too, he's from LA.
He's from LA.
So the only time he saw a horse was in like Griffith Park when he was a little kid before he was ever incarcerated. And like he had seen those horses for the first time in that many years. That's the first time he saw a horse. So that's like just a huge experience for someone anyways. But there's access, of course, to very many things within prison. Alcohol being one of those things. They can make it themselves, again, sneak it in, all of those things. So since his first time in the program, he chose to like get sober, and now he leads NA groups, AA groups. Like he tries to do as much as he possibly can within the walls, just to like he has, I think, like 26 grandkids now.
Why did he get sober? What happened to him with his alcohol?
He drank so much alcohol that's made inside prison that he went blind for 24 hours.
Just went blind from alcoholism, and then woke up the next day and was like, I'm gonna get sober.
And it was lucky that like we had our group there within that like certain time frame, that now he's just like,
and he's so articulate, and he's so calm, and he's so friendly.
He's very grounding. He's like a very grounding person to have in our group.
Extremely dangerous man, dangerous man.
I mean, I can imagine that some of the most dangerous men on the planet are the most articulate, calm, and grounding people. They just decide
this is true. Yeah,
they just have different rules, right?
Yeah.
For them, your rule of not killing someone, but if you're disrespected for them, that rule is necessary.
And I would like to say that he killed that inmate because that inmate was disrespectful to a staff member. Now, I wouldn't say that is the choice that we should make as humans, but again, he acted in the skill set that he knew.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you why, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of times it doesn't matter the why. Yeah, what matters is what's the result, right?
Yeah.
And so it's also understanding and balancing these things. And as a lawyer, it's like I try to see all situations, and I understand there are situations, but most people just immediately hear murder or they kill someone and they just automatically think the worst. And a lot of times that is the case, but it's just understanding that everybody has specific attention and everybody has specific things. And not only that, but you were just raised differently than someone else, right? It's like somebody, for example, looking at the color red, and for them it means life and happiness, but to another person it means death, murder, blood, right? And so it's understanding that everybody has different rules and they're all raised differently. And this guy, it sounds like he had to survive every moment of every day. No one was there to support him. He got basically kicked out and he was on his own, and he probably did what he could, became a drug dealer because he had no other options in the situation that he was in. And so, I mean, of course, that's us understanding this from dealing with people in these situations. But most people, especially I think in America too, because we're so sheltered and we don't understand a lot of the hardships, that a lot of people can't see every side of the equation.
And I think that's, I am super privileged. I'm white. I come from an upper class family. My experience with the law and the justice system was like, I got in trouble when I was 18 and like, I got a slap on the wrist. Somebody who had gotten the charges that I did, had they been a different ethnicity, had they been a different status, financial status, that crime could have been something that would change their life drastically. And I think that that's such an important thing us as facilitators is to remember, is like, how can we best support, a community and a world where privilege keeps you out of trouble sometimes. And some of these individuals, they just were at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they made one poor choice, and their idols and their role models were gang leaders and they prostitutes and, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's really important to remember of like, we are so lucky that we have certain privileges.
Well, I think we're all just victims of our circumstances. A lot of us, right? And most people, well, not most people, but that sometimes people don't have a choice. And not only that, but they can't see the other choice because they were raised a specific way and they were taught this is the right way. And so obviously society has different rules than those types of individuals, but they were just doing what they thought was best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it can be very difficult. And then you said you had another story of another inmate. Do you want to read his review first?
Juan. I don't know if Juan has a.
One has one in
Oh,
here.
Yeah,
we also have
obviously
another
Juan has
ambassador
one.
too who wrote a poem, and
Mhm.
so we'll share his poem too.
Do you want
Yeah.
to tell Michael? Michael is from San Diego.
Yeah, Michael's from San Diego. He
Oh, wait, I want to hear Juan's review first.
Okay, let me find Juan's.
Yeah,
Well,
if
you
you
find it
can.
out.
Oh, got it. If it's not ready, then yeah, we can hear Michael's story. Sorry, I thought that was it. I was
no,
like,
she's
she's
got
to the right
Michael's
page.
there.
I
I
have
don't
Michael's
think
right
Juan's
here.
is in there.
No, maybe it's okay.
You gosh, the handwriting in this book is like you either have the tattoo artist, graffiti artist, perfect writing, people with perfect cursive, or people who have just like really bad handwriting. So
okay.
Kendra's the reader of
I
the.
mean, as a lawyer, I have the worst handwriting.
Yeah.
I can't read my own handwriting.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
when teachers are like, you have to write by hand, I'm like, I'm gonna get 0. You're not gonna be able to read what I wrote.
Did you find Juan's?
Mhm.
She found Juan's.
Okay.
This is from when we saw him for the first time.
It's just a sentence.
No way.
Mhm.
Good for him.
That's
Keeping
it.
it short and sweet.
He just said, "This is a very memorable moment in my life. Thank you."
That's cute.
That is-
Actually, it's so funny that like if you had asked him to write this, so we see him next week. So we'll update you. We'll have him write a
Yeah.
new review and see what he says. I think if you had given him the book now,
It'd be very different.
yeah. Yeah.
So you have them write it out for the very first time because you want to hear what it is, and then
Yep.
maybe at the
Mhm.
end.
Sometimes
see what the
they'll
difference is.
sometimes they'll write it if it's their second time.
Yeah.
Just like give us positive notes because we like.
I would do
hearing
it after the first time, and then I would do it after they graduate.
Yeah.
And I would see what the difference is between the first time they wrote something and then when
Yeah.
they're actually done with the program.
Oh yeah, Michael. San Diego tattoo artist, super cool guy. Was a bank robber, and robbed a few banks.
Good jewelry stores.
Yeah, robbed a few. Yeah, just he robbed. He was robbing.
Yeah.
He just got caught.
Yeah, he just got caught. He got caught.
You're not a bank
and
robber if you don't
He's
get
a-
caught.
exactly.
He's a reoffender.
Yeah, he's a
unfortunately, so-
reoffender.
It's the lawyer in me.
Yeah, he got caught, unfortunately. Yeah, reoffender too. He caught a charge and then violated parole and got back, got a larger sentence. So yeah, he wrote a poem for us.
Yeah, he wrote a poem.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with horses, moving walls, moving hearts with untouchable forces. We all make a choice and we all have a voice. With you and your team, we've all but seen the intentions of your heart has taken us a lot to start, a point in our lives to put down our knives. We live life worth living because it's amazing what you can do with horses, moving walls, moving hearts with untouchable forces. Thank you from my heart.
How lovely. That's awesome. That's really special.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a good one.
Mm-hmm.
No, he did a good job encapsulating what you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he put it into his words,
Yeah, in his
and
own
it wasn't
voice.
something that you guys asked him to do.
Mhm.
He just wrote it on his own.
I think that's
Yeah.
like one of the things for the program that seems so important to us is the ripple effect of the program. So
Yeah.
yes, we talk about inmates. Yes, we support inmates, but the inmates have to interact with staff, and staff in prison and the healthcare workers and the correctional officers, they're burnt out. They're having post-traumatic stress. They're having anxiety, depression from their job. And there's not a lot of support for them either. So you have these two demographics that are lacking support, trying to interact with one another, and you're just getting
War.
war. You're just getting dehumanizing behavior. You're just getting violence. You're just getting aggression, lack of understanding, lack of empathy from both sides. And I think what makes this program so cool is not often do you see horses on a prison yard. And so that correctional officer that checks us in, that correctional officer that stands on the fence line, the healthcare worker that stops by and pets the pony, they're also being impacted by this. They're also having a day at the office that's more lighthearted or that provides them with some support or nature, those kind of topics that we're talking about. And so I think that like what makes this so impactful is we're hoping that it's not just the inmate that we're serving. It's the correctional officer we're helping. It's the healthcare worker that now has a patient that isn't going to punch them with bad news, or even the families of these individuals who have had such a horrendous, upbringing, or their fathers disappeared or, in prison, and they don't have skills to mend that relationship. And this program is allowing them to learn those skills. So it's impacting more than just our inmates. It's impacting the institution. And I think that's the big goal for us.
And it's really cool when we can see that, because there was people, that definitely doubted this program when we started, but they were willing. They were like, let's see what these girls can do, because if they can make it easier for us to do our jobs here, it's going to make everything easier for everyone else to be on the yard and for all the correctional officers. And she really like took us under her wing. And was forced to interact with an inmate that she didn't want to
Oh,
really
the correctional
necessarily
officer.
interact with.
Yeah.
Because we wanted them to come to the space and we saw how much they could grow. And it actually really assisted because now that, this inmate is more willing to work with officers and see them as help instead of.
We don't normally
You
like
know.
pluck inmates out of the yard to join our group. And this one individual, we just plucked him out based on an interaction that we had, and he joined our group. And he was inmate that staff did not like working with. He was very erratic. He was unpredictable, very violent. And so they didn't want to kind of be involved. And when they saw his interaction in the group and with the horses, it started to shift, and they had a little bit more compassion.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important with the program as well, is hopefully everybody is taking away something.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're able to see the ripple effects. That's
Yeah.
awesome that you're able to feel that, and also that you're getting the reflection
Yeah.
from the people that are working there that there is having an effect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. We're about an hour and a half in, so I want to ask, what's your guys' favorite memory, each of you, from this program so far? And I kind of want to maybe wrap it up after that.
My favorite moment. Can I do like a time period versus like a moment?
It's up to you. It's your story.
Okay.
I'm just here to listen.
I think like the time period that I'm like is the right now, is that the program is like it's building, it's growing. We have institutions that are coming to us that are wanting to sign up. This program is expanding in a way that I never dreamed possible. I'm sitting here on a podcast talking about it. We have a film, we won an award. I'm like riding the high of something that everybody told me was impossible. Everybody told me would not be successful. And so for me, right now, the success that I get to experience and witness and share, that's it for me. That's what feels the best.
Got it. So you're living out your life
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah.
You created a dream that you didn't know existed.
Exactly.
Yeah, and now you're on a different type of wave.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's rad. I mean, it's something you built on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is super cool. Yeah, now you have a partner in crime too.
This crazy
Yeah.
lady
Yeah.
signed up.
Yeah,
And
she
she's like,
signed
yeah,
up.
I'll go to prison with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now
Here we
I'm, like,
are.
I'm locked in.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
Yeah.
addicted.
yeah.
You heard it
really-
herself.
I
Yeah.
heard it. Yeah.
I think, my favorite time is probably just the feeling that we get after like every time we do something like this, whether it's even sometimes we just take the horses for a staff day, like in the middle of the yard, like in the plaza. So
Yeah,
it's
the
called
plaza.
kind of like the central area, and just have a staff day with my horses. But these horses, I spend so much time with
what does
them.
a staff day mean?
Basically,
just
we
interacting with the
interact
staff.
with
Yeah.
the staff.
That's
we
awesome.
just hold
Yeah.
a horse and say,
They're
like,
coming and
feed them
petting
a
it,
carrot.
taking some selfies.
We want them to know like their presence, in this
Yeah.
system is not like forgotten about by us, and of course we appreciate what they do.
And do you
and-
guys get paid through the government through
Yeah.
this? Got it. Is this like a grant?
So
or, like,
there's
how
a
does it
few
work?
way for us to receive
Well, I guess the
funding.
reason I'm asking is this: I want, if people are listening, let's say you send this to somebody who works
Yeah.
in the prison system, like so that they can understand how you guys get compensated.
Absolutely. So the government definitely pays us state funding. Other organizations that have funding to outsource towards rehabilitation programs, mental health programs. Honestly, our biggest source of funding is private donors, people who just want to help the individuals. You can sponsor an inmate, you can sponsor a program, you can sponsor
Like
a
their
horse.
family.
Or outside communities. So like, people who watch our film and were impacted and want to know how they can help support that. That's a big drive for us. That's a huge portion of a lot of our funding, are people in the kindness of their hearts just being like, we see this problem, please help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, state funding.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so if you did want to sponsor a horse or sponsor an inmate, how much does that cost
So
approximately?
for an inmate, it's $73 for them to get sponsored for a group. It's $700 to sponsor a whole group
For a year or for one
for
day?
one session.
One
Yep,
session.
one
Got it.
session.
Okay.
That's just 3.5 hours of time. And so, so that, and then a mini horse is like $150 a month to sponsor. That includes all their food, their maintenance, their basic care. That's kind of like our main thing. And then we have full size horses that are also part of the program, and they're $200 a month to sponsor. And again, that's just like, it helps alleviate the cost. Hay is very expensive. Water is very expensive. So
How expensive is it?
So unfortunately for California, it's much more expensive than Ohio, right? We have a location in
imagine.
Ohio and a location in California. So Kendra, how much are you paying a bail?
Between like 18 and 25 really dollars.
And
depending
how
on
much
what you
how
want.
much hay does a horse eat in a day?
A horse eats a big horse eats probably about a half a bale a day
Yeah.
of hay.
Okay.
And that's like different kinds of, trying to get them to have their full supplements and nutrients. So they get different kinds of hay and other kinds of grains and things like that. But yeah, it's about 5 bales a week per
Okay.
horse.
And then
for
how
the
many
mid
horses do you guys have on each farm?
How many horses are on my farm right now? Well, we have 8 horses, and then I also have 2 donkeys as well, 2 Jennies, and then she has 2 Jacks at home. And you have 8 horses.
I have
too?
8 horses as
So we
well.
So
have-
this can add up very quickly.
Yeah,
10
yeah,
and
yeah,
10,
yeah,
Yeah, multiples of
Mhm.
horses.
It's,
Yeah.
Horses are not a cheap expense.
Mhm.
It's, and it's not like you can put them away and not have to feed them. They
Yeah.
whether they're working or not, they're still getting care.
Yeah, of
Mhm.
course.
And so that's really kind of like our biggest financial commitment is the
We're-
animals.
But they're great. I mean, they do so much of the work that we can't do
Yeah.
it without them.
No, They're the program.
And yeah, they just thrive in the environment too.
And how
which
many
is-
horses do you have in
I have
Ohio?
8 horses.
You also have 8. So
Yeah,
you both
yeah.
have
And
8.
the 2 donkeys.
She has 10
has
horses in
2
total.
donkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
10
I
equines,
have
yeah.
I
10
have
equines.
how many equines? Well, full size horses. So I have four, and then 2 donkeys, and then a mini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much? I mean, this is obviously off tangents, but I'm just interested, like, how much does it cost to buy like these horses? I know it depends if it's like a showman horse,
Yeah,
or if it's a normals,
absolutely.
but like I'm guessing these types of horses are not specifically showman type horses,
No.
so they're more standard type horses. So how much does it cost to like buy a horse?
So most of our horses have actually been donated to the program.
Okay, that's awesome.
So they're
you
on
are
there
looking
like
for donations of horses too.
yeah, no more horses at this point.
No
in
more
our
horses
no more
right
horses
now.
at this
We
point.
will
We have
take hay
Got it.
donations.
we'll take
though.
hay donations. Take
But
hay
no horses,
donations.
got it.
And yeah, but like a lot come through donation. Our horses are not rideable. So like for a lot of horses who need a second chapter in their life, this is an opportunity for them to have that as well. So we have rescues, we have horses that have had different lives before us. And it's kind of a hodgepodge of things.
Why are they not rideable?
They could be injured, they could be old, they could have kind of like shown that they're not interested in the job that they're doing right now and they need
Mhm.
something different. And so you have 2 options really when that happens. You can kind of like throw them out in a pasture and say, see you later, when you are ready to die. And then
Yeah.
you could have our option where they can come, they can have a purpose, they can do something different, they can interact with humans. A lot of horses, they're herd animals. They want to be
Yeah.
with people and be in an environment. So our business allows for that for a horse as well.
Yeah, it gives them a second chance.
Exactly.
That's awesome. When you were riding horses when you were younger, were you just like jumping over like different
Yep.
obstacles, or were you like doing tricks on it?
Yeah,
What
so
was,
I'm a
like, your
hunter
thing?
jumper rider. So
Hunter
a
jumper
hunter
rider.
jumper
So
rider.
you were like hunting shit while you were riding
so
your
I
horse?
have done that before. So I've done fox hunting where we go and we
Just like with a shotgun or a bow and arrow?
it's with hounds.
Okay, got it.
And
Okay, sorry.
we
Just,
go,
like envisioning
we
you
go,
on this horse
and
just
you get
taking
people get
animals.
really drunk and
Okay.
you ride horses and you run as fast as you can at like 4-foot
Yeah.
stone walls and you hope
Okay.
you make it over while you're chasing like wild hounds
Got
to
it.
fight a fox.
Did you ever not make it over?
I've always made it over. I've seen
Okay.
a lot of people not make
Got
it
it.
over.
Okay.
We have both fallen off of horses.
Oh,
multiple
yeah, yeah,
times.
I can
yeah.
imagine.
You
It's
fall
just,
off a
it's
lot.
just a
This is part of the
risk.
game.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
part of the game. Yeah, it's
and
gonna
then-
happen eventually.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My what I was known for, what I was good at was jumping as high as I could and running as fast as I can, and turning as tight as I can.
Yeah.
So definitely an adrenaline junkie in that
Mhm.
front. And I still do that to this day. I still compete. I still
Yeah.
ride.
Was your mom or dad really into this? Is that why?
No, actually, there was like I mentioned, I was raised kind of religious, and next to my temple was a riding facility. And so every time I went to temple, every couple days, I saw the horses, and I really wanted to do it. And so my parents were like, "Whatever, sure." And
Next thing you know.
yeah, next thing I know,
Next thing
Yeah.
you know, you're
Yeah.
buying $20 hay bales. for
$20 hay
horses.
bales. and keep
Forever.
acquiring more horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Yeah.
compete now just for fun? Or?
Yeah, I do. So like I mentioned, I live in Ohio, and the World Equestrian Center is like Disneyland for horse people. It's located in Ocala, Florida, and it's just like a mega facility. I go down there, I show locally. I still have that bug
Mhm.
of the
Yeah.
adrenaline.
Yeah, why
And we-
not?
we
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. if
Go
you
on
can
trail
still do
We
rides.
go
it, why
trail
not?
rides a lot. We
Yeah.
go camping with the
Mhm.
horses. We do tricks with some of them. So it's
Yeah.
whatever we can do with a horse, we're gonna try to do it.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, this is your life.
Ride our donkeys around.
Ride
at
our
my
donkey,
place.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Our donkeys.
Kendra's a little bit more of a wild woman than I would say I am.
Yeah.
I think that's totally biased because you're English and I would never
Yes.
jump over those things.
Yeah.
that she's-
Yeah,
that
right.
she's
We come from
doing.
different
Yeah.
disciplines of riding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes for, a really nice balance because
Mhm.
I think it's kind of refreshing too with like the herd management of the horses. Where, like, we're very in tune. Like we know what they need. We don't, it's very easy. And we have the support to call each other at any of our farms. Be like,
Yeah.
this is happening to this horse. Like, what do
What
we
do we do?
do?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a very natural like friendship and flow and business that we have.
I can imagine. Do
I'm
any
so
of the
lucky
horses
to
like
have
ever
her.
get weird and try to kick you guys and stuff, or has that ever
The donkey,
happened?
Kendra's donkeys are
Yeah.
kicky. I guess
Yeah.
my donkeys are kind of kicky too.
Yeah.
No, we have such well-behaved horses. I would
Mhm.
trust them with our lives and
Mhm.
other people's lives, really is what we
Yeah.
do.
I
So
mean, you do, yeah.
yeah, literally.
Literally.
Yeah. I do tell everybody though, like I do talk about safety and programming. And the one thing I say is like, if you go up to my horse and you smack him in the ass, they're likely going to have a response
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
don't like. So
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's really it. If you can kind of manage that, you're doing fine when you're
Yeah.
working with our horses. Only
Yeah.
our horses. I don't recommend
Yeah.
that for other people's.
And it's so interesting. I bet you guys have met some characters too, just like from the videos that I watch. Like some of the inmates just seem like they got so much personality.
Yeah. They have a
And I'm
lot to
sure
say.
they're hilarious
Mhm.
and they're just like stoked to be there because they probably don't have a lot of space
Yep.
where they can openly just kind of like
Yeah.
chat and feel
Yeah.
safe. So I'm sure they finally let their personalities let loose
Yeah.
and their
Some
characters.
wild
Yeah,
ones.
some wild ones. I can imagine, especially in Max Penitentiary, because I mean, like you're saying, you know, for being so eloquent, for being in that, but I think the greatest of criminals, right? For them to have gotten to that point, they had to do a lot of little things, or they were super smart and
Oh,
they just
yeah.
finally got caught
Mhm.
later on down the road. So
Or
I'm
they
sure you're,
committed extremely violent crimes. Like there are
Yeah.
people who did commit that one crime that caught them
Yeah.
that life sentence. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do have that. So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you find that a lot of these, well, I guess this is a rhetorical question, but my thoughts were, do you think that some people are unredeemable, or do you find that they just don't care to be redeemed? Is that something that's come up?
I actually mentioned this to her earlier. It was like something that so many people think about, like murderers and, child molesters and these people who have like really high offenses. And there's like, they think that they're evil. And it's like, these are not evil people. Like they have experienced trauma and something has happened in their lives and they've made poor choices as a reflection of what's happened to them. But like they come to our group and they show like more vulnerability than like so many other populations that we've worked with. It's like the overall theme is like, these people just lacked love. Like we've never met someone who I would consider like evil or no sociopaths. Like they just really didn't have the proper tools and they're in a shitty situation now. So
And I think the major pushback we get from the program is people think that our viewpoint means that these people should get out and they should be loose in the community, the outside world. And that's not what we believe. We believe that there is a reason that these individuals are incarcerated, but they still have to live in a community and they still have to interact with other people and they still need to learn skills and repair the trauma that has been done to them, that they have done to others. So a murderer should probably stay behind bars. A child molester should probably stay behind. Like these crimes, they need to be separated, but they needed to be supported as well.
And they need to not be dehumanized in the ways that the system is now been built around, for them. So
No, I completely understand. I'm just wondering if, like, once again, if the ripple effects are more effective dealing with the people that might not ever see the light of day again, or going to a place where those kids are maybe just homeless and there's a homeless center where they might need some equine training. And I'm not saying this to tell you that you're doing it wrong, but I'm just like contemplating the idea of, just on an energetic basis, it's probably going to have the greatest ripple effect with the people that are the sickest and have been through the worst of scenarios.
And I think, an individual that we work with said the same thing. Had he had this program when he was earlier, he wouldn't have committed the crimes. And there are so many equine therapy programs out there that are targeting that demographic, that are working with the children, that are working with the homeless. That's not us. And I think that is
no, but we need all of it.
Yeah, we need all
of it.
We need everybody. And people always ask me, why would you do this? Why would you help these people? And it's because they need it too. They need the help. And if we can provide that for them, then that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, I just commend you guys for being so brave. You guys are going into literally the hornet's nest, into the scariest place on the planet, and you guys are doing it with happiness and letting horses run free, and you're dealing with the most intense criminals. Like, I don't know many people that would have the bravery to, first of all, want to put themselves in this situation. Also, just, the confidence and the understanding that you are having an effect in a place where most people probably told you, why the hell are you doing this? This is going to have no effect. This is a waste of your time. I don't know why you're even trying to do this. Like, you should go put your time and effort into something else.
Yes. And I think to those people and to people who are too afraid to talk about it, to show up to prison, to do this kind of work, there are other avenues that you can do to support the demographic. Educate yourself, research, go into state, a lot of the statistics in prison are state knowledge. You can just go through that. You can learn, you can educate. Vera Institute is a wonderful resource. They have great research on mass incarceration. There's podcasts, there's all of these things that you can do to educate yourself without stepping into prison. And I just encourage everybody to do that. You would be surprised at how many people in your day-to-day life have been impacted by the criminal justice system, whether it's themselves or their family. And we forget that. It brings it back to that circle, that humanity circle. You forget what people have been through and how the taboo subjects show up in their lives. And so the best thing that we can do is just support one another, radical acceptance, take care of yourself and educate yourself and learn and donate, volunteer, whatever it may be, because humanity needs more people driven towards acceptance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is something just like in the last couple of weeks I've been realizing with individuals. I'm a person that really holds space for others to kind
Mm.
of share their story.
Yeah.
And I don't think individuals just on definitely on like a big like when we're thinking big picture, it's on a micro level. You have no idea the effect that you're having on another human being just by listening.
Mm.
You don't have to say anything 99% of the time. Just literally letting someone get it out. You're letting them move that energy through them. And then you just also taking in that energy, which is a
Mhm.
huge part of the process, but doing it in a way that's safe and allows them to fully express themselves. You're probably going to heal 99% of the stuff that's going on with them
Yeah.
just by listening.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so the better listeners that we become, I think the more the world will heal. And
Yes.
so you guys are giving a really amazing space to do that. So I commend
Thank
you
you.
once again. So great work there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. At this point, I guess what I'm going to ask you both to close this off. What is one thing each of you want to leave our listeners with to end this podcast? And then after that, I want you to give them the contact information of how they can reach out to you, but we'll
Sure.
do that in a second. But if
Mhm.
each of you had to leave your listeners with one piece of advice or just one thing, what would be that one thing you would leave them with?
Do you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, go
You
ahead.
don't have something?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. You start.
Okay. Like we had mentioned earlier, is like the forgotten people, and like that's our demographic, is like these are the forgotten people. But it's like I would just want to remind our listeners, like they're just because these people are stuffed in like the tiniest little rooms all over our country doesn't mean they're forgotten people. Like we shouldn't forget about them. You shouldn't forget about yourself. And like if you can do more to, honor humanity and these people all over, no matter what their situation is, no matter what you can do to help, like it's gonna help you in return, grow as a person if you're able to see past all those things. So don't forget about other people, and don't forget about yourself and what you need as well.
That was something that I talked about at my birthday the other day when I was giving my birthday speech. I typically give a speech, and I was talking about how we had some losses in our community this year, where a friend had like killed himself, and like another person died of a drug overdose, and essentially, I think that those people got a bit forgotten,
Yeah.
and it was us not reaching out and checking on them, and
Mhm.
kind of like knowing that something was wrong, but not actually doing anything to help them. Because in my opinion, those people, well, not my opinion, they were trying to escape reality and they did escape reality. And if we were there and we reached out a helping hand and we were just there for them, maybe going and hanging out with them, just talking to them, listening, it might have turned out differently. So I recommended to everyone to not forget about your friends. At the end of the day, we are a community, and whether they are a part of your immediate community or your distant community, we're all part of the same tribe at the end of the day. And it's
Yeah.
important to reach out to each other and check on each other, because I think a lot of people do feel forgotten, and that's where a lot of the issues stem.
Mine's right aligned with that. I think the best thing that you can do, the best practice I've found is really defining what unconditional love is for yourself. What does it mean to unconditionally love yourself? If you can do that, you can take that steps. It's a lot easier to start to unconditionally love others. And we don't have enough of that self reflection of what does it truly mean to love yourself through all of the flaws that you see. I think we'll just breed more of that mentality in our
Mhm.
community.
So we have Rebels Farm, Rebels plural. So can you tell people how, if they want to donate, if they want to get in contact with you, do you want to give your full name, email, website, whatever you want to give to everybody, and the best ways for them to reach you, and which camera should she be looking into? This one?
So, we are in a unique industry. So, like, personal information is usually not kind of spoken. So, the best way to get in contact with us is through our social media, Instagram, our website, rebelsfarm.org.
What's your Instagram?
It Rebels Farm as well. And so those are definitely the best way. Our email's on there, our website, and the link to our film. We worked on a project this year, the Heard Within Prison project. We did a part 1. The film's on YouTube. And then we are actually filming these next couple of weeks. So there'll be more episodes coming out. So I think that's definitely the best way if you have any interest in donating, you can do so through the website as well.
Yeah.
Got it. And that's just rebelsfarm.com.
Rebelsfarm.org.
And then
.org, yeah.
.org.
Yeah,
Sorry,
.org.
.org, not .com. And then Rebels Farm, is it rebels_farm on Instagram?
Nope,
Or is it
it's just Rebels Farm.
Just
Yep.
one word.
Yep.
Okay, got it. And then is that on TikTok and other stuff
No
too?
TikTok.
Just Instagram.
Nope, just
Okay,
Instagram.
got it.
Mhm.
Cool. So they'll be able to find
Instagram,
your
Facebook,
information there.
yeah.
Instagram and Facebook.
Got
Yeah.
it. Do you want people to reach out to you by phone or just reach out
Nope,
to you through the
not
website?
through phone. Yep, through the
Okay.
website. It's linked to an email that we kind of use. And then also we're both in control of our social media. So you can direct message us. But yeah, not through our phones.
Well, this was an amazing episode.
This
I
is
appreciate
wonderful.
you
Thank
coming
you for
in,
having
Thank you
us.
so
sharing your
much for
story.
having us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun, and thank you for just coming and spending time with me. And it's been really good to see you
It's
after
been really
so long.
great. Yeah.
And I think that's about it. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you being here. And if you want to hear more about their story, rebelsfarm.org.
Yeah.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Got it.
Thank you so
Cool.
much.
All right, wrapping it up. Thank you guys.